TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Van Halen show, Jimmy and John. Good to see you, brothers.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Fantastic. Hey, look at that comment there from a very good friend of the channel. His name is Michael. He's going, look at that comment, John. We know why.
We were just talking. Oh my God.
I know why.
Unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, canceling gigs because of, you have to, people can't get to it.
It took me 3 hours to get normally where it would take me 45 minutes. So I was like right by the Bronx, in New York here. And literally 3 hours to get about, really, you could probably do it in 20 minutes on a parkway if you got on the highway. It took me 3 hours because you had to go everything was covered with water. It was crazy. It's crazy right now. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, I've lived in New York here my whole life, and it's like, this is, at least where I am, this is Jerry Leica. John, did you build an ark yet? I think we have to. It's like, we've had like over the summer, we had, in one day, we had like 2 months worth normal amount of rain. In one day, we had it over the summer. And now today, it had to be like 4 or 5 inches of rain today, just in one day. It would not stop. It was crazy since this morning. It finally stopped now. And, but who knows if it's going to start again? I don't know. John, go Mets. Yeah, the Mets game was canceled. There'll be a doubleheader tomorrow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I have a show tomorrow. Hopefully,
Facebook. Who's Facebook user? What is it? Craig Stoffco in disguise or something like that, making fun of my Mets.
That's a good point. Facebook user, because it doesn't translate quickly here on the StreamYards link. Let us know who you are, please, because you sound familiar.
Yeah. It's funny because tomorrow here in Bridgeport, there's this big, it's called Sound on Sound. It's a big, festival. Like the Chili Peppers are playing, and then one night, tomorrow night, and the next night is John Mayer headlining or whatever. So it's a big deal, but it's out in an open field. It's gonna be like my buddy's going tomorrow, and it's got to be hard with it's waterlogged or
I think the weather's supposed to be nice though tomorrow. I think it's actually supposed to be.
Yeah, I guess, but is the ground is the ground going to be muddy still, or
no? You know what? I just looked at the forecast here. It says 75% chance of rain tomorrow. Sunday is supposed to be nice, but tomorrow 75% chance of rain. So you know what that means? It's going to rain.
100%. Yeah, it's going to rain.
But you guys are lucky in Connecticut because you ever the Greenwich, what is it called? The Greenwich Town Party or something like that? You ever hear about that, Jim?
No.
Because only mostly residents of Greenwich, Connecticut. It's a like real wealthy area. It's like one of the most wealthy areas in this country. And every year they have like a concert for the residents. You have to put your name in like a lottery to get picked. But it's like, it's crazy. I think, I'm trying to remember. I think they had Clapton once. I mean,
I have heard that Clapton.
They have it at the town park. And Andrew, I don't know if you missed it, but there's this town here called Greenwich, Connecticut, and it's like one of the most, affluent towns in the United States. It's like all the CEOs of corporations live there, big, beautiful mansions and stuff like that. But every year they have like a town concert, and only for residents. You got to put their name in the lottery to get tickets. They have it down on the waterfront on the Long Island Sound, but they have like huge acts. I think one night it was a couple years ago. One night it was the Eagles, and I forget who was on before the Eagles. It was like this, I think the Zach Brown Band and the Eagles on the same night. And this is a town like on their summertime concert in the town, and I'm pretty sure they had Clapton years ago too. It's like, it's kind of crazy because it's kind of a quiet thing, and like you got to live there and get in the lottery to go to it. But it's pretty interesting anyway. But anyway, that's it.
a little bit different from the average neighborhood band playing at Christmas time, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember I was there like the day after the Eagles played, and the guy was like, "Yeah, we had our boat on the Long Island Sound, and we watched the show from the boat. It was great." And I was like, "Wow, it must be nice."
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, you know, it's true, isn't it? You know, money does have its advantages and its privileges.
Yeah,
sure
I mean,
does.
if you get enough money, you can hire these bands for your party.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
true. You're right.
if you,
You're right.
I don't know, 5 million.
Yeah.
These guys got it.
I think it's less than that for a lot of these bands. Yeah, I think it's actually less than that. You probably get cheap Trick for like $100,000.
Yeah.
No
kidding.
I think they do. I think they do those type of gigs too. Cheap Trick. Hey, did you guys hear about Aerosmith?
No.
Steven Tyler fractured his larynx or something like that, and they had to cancel their whole farewell tour for now.
Oh, it's completely canceled?
He fractured his larynx. I don't know however long that takes to heal. And then one of their background singers, this girl background singer, the same as her, she had something done with her voice. She's not allowed to talk for 3 days. She had to have emergency surgery or something. It's like, yeah, it's crazy. But Steven Tyler, I think it was a fractured larynx, they said.
I'll tell you, I watched that first show out of Philadelphia. It was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, he sounded great.
And a little Van Halen connection. So their drummer now for this tour is John Douglas, who is Alex's drum tech.
Yeah.
And who is responsible for.
He designed. He was Alex's drum tech and designed all the drum kits from like
painted the heads and all that.
Yeah, from like probably like 1996 on or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
because he was talking about that. Remember on Van Halen 3, they had that Sanskrit.
Yeah,
the Sanskrit.
That was all him, right? Yeah,
that was all him. Yeah.
So now he's the drummer in Aerosmith. So he's a huge Alex. He said Alex was his idol. So it's like and getting to work with him was like he was on a show this week. I think that Jeremy White guy show, and it was pretty cool because he was asking him technical like questions about Alex's snare drum tunings and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool to listen to all that stuff.
Good.
But but he sounded like a real nice guy, really cool guy. And I mean, so now he's got a dream gig. I think he played with Billy Gibbons too. I think he toured with Billy Gibbons for a summer or something in Europe. He mentioned that. So so that's kind of cool.
Fantastic.
And he said Alex was the guinea pig for these in-ear monitors that that all these people use. I forget the brand. It's like the popular one. I can't think of it right now. But apparently their sound man, I guess, for Van Halen was he created them, and so he used Alex as his guinea pig because Alex was like 70% deaf in one ear, and he used to basically have a PA on either side of him. If you watch Live Without a Net,
that big speaker
PA cabinets facing him, and in those cabinets was all just I think Eddie pretty much, you know what I mean, and a little bit of vocal, and so he's pretty. And if you've ever met Alex and talked to him, he's kind of hard of hearing. I mean, you have to speak kind of. It seemed like he had to speak kind of loud. He's so he would respond, but it was pretty good. So those in-ear monitors, they said he was the first guy to use them, and now it's like standard across the whole. I forget what they're called. Something ears, Ultimate Ears, I think they're called, something like that. They make headphones now and everything like that. But I think they had like a bass and like a treble driver built into these tiny little, and they do like molds of your ears, and and they fit them in. Everybody uses them nowadays, but I mean, I wonder if Alex got a piece of that company because invested in it or something, because they're everybody uses them now, and so he was ground zero for those. So
anyway. Knowing the Van Halens and their investments, probably not.
Probably not.
Hey John, good to see you, bro. I know that you're going to be having a lunch break on the show soon. You got to keep your health up. But before you do that, do you want to do a shout out to the folks in the chat? We've got a few people here. Is that that okay if you can do that, bro?
Absolutely. We got Michael also. He's obviously a New Yorker here, and he says 99% of gigs canceled. I'm surprised it's not 100% because it was a nightmare out there today. Let's see. We have Facebook user who we don't know who that is yet, unless they reveal themselves. I'll scroll down and see. But they said hello, New Zealand, and Greg Roberts. Let's see. Jerry Leica. There's Jerry from Michigan.
Hey, Jerry.
Jerry.
Greg Roberts. Let's see. Tim Thomas. Hey, Tim. And Simon Williams just checking in before he goes off to Dreamland.
Simon.
Hey, Simon. Oh, he's got a cold. Simon's got a cold. Well, feel better, Simon. And then let's see. Oh, a Facebook user said Eric Clapton just played a private millionaires only show in Detroit for Dan Gilbert a week ago. I dressed up real nice. No dice getting in. Ellen Toll. Hello, Ellen. She's wishing Simon to get well, sleep well.
Awesome.
R3 locking nut. Cheers, dudes. What's up? Let's see. Charles Green. Hey, Charles. Holly Lewis. Hey, Holly. Jonathan Nicholas. What's going on? Let's see. Who else we got? Randy Price. Hey, Randy. Paul Martin Woods. What's up, Paul? He's watching from the UK. Let's see.
All right.
Yeah, we're all over the place tonight, right?
International.
Michigan, UK. We're international. Yeah. I think Brody Hutchins. Hey, Brody, how you doing?
Hey, Brody, man, what's up?
And that's everybody for now. I think I got everybody. I hope so.
Fantastic, bro.
Yeah.
So we've got someone that we're going to throw into the into the show. You know, podcaster to the stars. Podcaster to the stars.
Hey.
Alan Garber.
Surprise.
Alan Garber.
Right.
Hey guys.
In the house.
Now it's getting interesting.
Good to see you, bro.
I couldn't resist to come in and stir the pot, man.
Yeah.
No, you're more than welcome to. We've obviously we're going to be talking about Van Halen things. We've got a couple of things that we want to talk about, but while you're here, bro, tell us about what you've been up to social media wise. You've been doing a couple of interesting things recently, brother.
Yeah, it was. You guys know because we're all buddies and we keep in touch, and so you guys kind of know what's been going on. But I did appear on Dweezil Zappa's Running with the Dweezil podcast about a month ago now, and you also know that was coming for a long time because he had been trying to get me to do it over a year ago, and just it happened our schedules were finally able to work out to do it, and technical difficulties here and there, and which were a lot of fun. I sent John the original rough cut of it, where this everything was terrible. Like you could hear me, like there's one point you hear me totally drop my lapel mic on the floor when I'm talking about Don Landee. I get all excited and I drop it off, and then and of course, I was playing just one guitar, and when we did it live, we didn't have time for me to go, like switch guitars or anything like that if I'm, doing different things. So I just kind of played one guitar all the way through, and and the sound quality was god awful and everything. So we figured out a way around that, Dweezil and I, and he, worked some magic on it to make me sound as if I know what I'm doing. So it came out really nice, and I had a great time. And I know I'd sent a link to you guys to check out. I hope you guys
from that rough cut that you sent me, I was like shocked when I heard the quality of the finished one. I was like, how are they going to save this thing? Because it was so difficult to hear you. I had to like crank it up so loud. It was crazy.
Yeah. It was kind of it, and it's like that on every one of his podcasts. I mean, and mine was not the worst. Like he had when he did Joe Satriani, that one was probably the one that caused him the most headaches, where he had to. He went back into like every little noise and tried to, mute it and stuff. I mean, it took Dweezil, just hours upon hours to fix that one Joe Satriani interview. And virtually every interview he does is like that. It's just the nature of the beast, and Dweezil is really committed to doing like the best quality podcast that he could do. He wants to make something that's entertaining for the people that are paying to subscribe to his podcast. And, it's a big deal to him. And, so he works extra hard on all that stuff too. So, I'm super happy with how it came out, and he's just super kind to me. And, we had a great time. And you guys know all the play-by-play, but for you folks out there, Running with the Dweezil podcast is something that Dweezil's been doing since not too long after Eddie passed away. And he kind of devotes interviews to various, guitar stars, and then a dude, and I'm the dude. And but the other guys are all like, some really great guitar players that that really love Eddie, and some are, they're all people busy being who they are, and they haven't, they're not people like you guys and me who have gotten to like focus a lot on just Van Halen, so it's like, I think, Dweezil recognizes that there's a whole community of people like us out there that really get super deep into the details that can kind of go beyond what the rock stars do, because the rock stars are busy being rock stars and making their own music and stuff. And, so I was really pleased and happy that I could get in and, have say a couple things and get to play some examples and kind of explain some things about Eddie's playing that I've spoken to you guys about before, but it was great to kind of get it to, a wider audience. And he's just become a great guy that, I love to chat with him. And our mutual friend, Craig Parker Adams, is just an awesome guy too. So, I mean, I've had a lot of fun chatting with him. Yep. And Dweezil, and they're just awesome guys. So that was a lot of fun, and managed to squeeze it in my busy life with the kids and everything. And then recently, last night I went to see my good friend Lance Lopez, fantastic guitarist out of Nashville, another one of my heavy hitter friends out there in Nashville who are making things happen. And hadn't seen him in a long time. Got to see him play last night. It's unbelievable set. If you guys haven't heard him, go check him out, Lance Lopez. And coming up, I'm going to see my good buddy JD Simo again, who's coming to Houston. So JD is going to be playing on October 14th. It's my father's birthday. So we're going to have some fun and get to hang and chat with him. So, good stuff happening. I get to be pretend like I don't have kids and a wife every once in a while. My wife lets me out of the house, and tonight is her night to be out of the house. She's going to see a concert with some of her friends, and she went to a day-long business meeting, but she's going to spend the evening with two of her coworkers, and I'm here with the kids. But they've been fed, they've been bathed, they brushed teeth, they got the pajamas on, and daddy's getting to be, pretend like I'm single for a minute.
Just remember, it's not babysitting when they're your own kids, Alan, all right?
Correct.
I used to get yelled at for that. It's not, I have to babysit. No, it's not babysitting when you're kids.
Yeah, but see, I'm the primary care provider for these kids. So I'm the parent all the time. So it's rare that I get a minute where my wife actually does something with the kids. So yeah, I'm golden on that account. But yeah, it's great. My lower back is killing me after bending over in the bathtub washing the hair, and oh man, such is life. But it's a good life, and it's great to see you guys. And I'm glad I was able to have some time to jump on with y'all. And hope we get to see our buddy Tanner, because Tanner's my good bud too. I can't wait to hear from him.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have Tanner on. We got Tanner's doing some cool stuff, so we're gonna definitely be spending a lot of time talking about that.
Right.
I want to say hi to Tanner. I want to say hi to Jonathan Nicholas. I want to say hi to Ty Price. Hey Ty. Let's see. Did I leave anybody else out? I think that Johnny Heartbreaker. And I think that's everybody that we got in there now. So, but Tanner's doing a great project there with the For Once and For All. He's going to put it to bed. It's going to be incredible. I mean, the Hot for Teacher intro that that everybody's believing what Ted Templeman said incorrectly in Greg's book about them recording that was a hot rod, I guess, and like tuning it and splicing it into there, the intro, which is completely will be debunked. And I mean, Tanner's even got an amazing example. I mean, that Herta pattern, I guess, is that what it is, Tanner, right? He's going to talk to us all about it, but where it's almost exactly the pattern like Alex plays on there. So this video that he's working on is going to be a must watch on YouTube video. So,
and that's a continuation of a conversation that we began a long time ago, almost the last time I was probably on with you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a long time coming. This is great stuff to tune into.
Yeah. And
only that, folks, his studio. He's building a studio, John.
Oh yeah. I've heard some stuff from that studio, and it's just like mind-blowing stuff already. It's been having a little fun with that. So we're gonna have him on. He'll talk about all that stuff. also, while we're on the 1984 kind of topic here, Alan, I know you're excited about Greg scored Don Landee. We kind of figured he'd be the guy that would get him at some point. You're right, exactly. So part one was all of the early stuff, and it was just well researched. You could just tell Greg knew the material. I mean, it was great. And I think Don, you could tell, felt real comfortable talking to Greg. It was almost just two people very comfortable with each other having a conversation. And so part two is coming up, I guess. I don't know if they've actually done it yet or what, but it's going to be a lot of Van Halen in part two. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's coming up. He gave us just a little sentence that was a taste, with regard to the guys not liking the sound of the live chamber on the first album, a little taste in there, but it's everybody gets a couple of, we get a couple of little dribs and drabs from Don here and there through Greg, through the Ted Templeman book, and through Van Halen Rising. And it's a major thing that I know has been in the works for a long time. And it's so exciting to read what Don and Greg came up with so far. So it's beyond exciting. I've been able to ask him a couple of questions through Dweezil, that he's answered for me. And it's like, so I just felt like, I was a miracle to get like a couple of sound bites from him. But what this is like, this is what I've been waiting for as long as I can remember, to get something really comprehensive. And I'm personally really super interested in all that stuff that was in part one. There's so many sessions that he was involved with that I had no idea he was in.
Yeah. I mean,
he's not credited on so many things, it's great.
Some of these classic songs that you find out Don Landee mixed this or something like that. I was like blown away by all that stuff. You know what I mean? That was, we got to figure out how we can let everybody know, if you haven't read it, where they can access it. It's I don't know, Alan,
we'll put that link.
Yeah,
we can put that link on the description on this video. So, folks, if you're watching on a replay,
so if you go
and hit the description, or if you're here in the stream now, at the end of this show, we'll attach it. Just before Jimmy talks to us about some guitars and stuff like that, guys, I've got a couple of questions in relation to the Landee thing. Is this going to put to bed a lot of rumors and a lot of innuendo that people have been having in regards to some Van Halen questions? Is Don Landee going to be able to nail it closed, or will it just add more fuel to the fire?
His memories of this were better than I thought, Alan, right? He was pretty sharp with all this stuff, so we can only hope that he has that kind of memories of what went on with Van Halen. But
okay.
And Conks and I have talked about this. I've told you guys a couple of things about this, through the stuff that I've gleaned through Dweezil telling me, about his conversations with Don, and Dweezil's in touch with Don all the time. Yeah, right, Tanner, 110% correct. Okay. But the thing is that to answer your question, Andrew, is that it's yes and no. And to piggyback on John's comment about like his memory, what Dweezil had told me was that his memory is incredibly sharp on a lot of things, the things that Don was specifically doing behind the desk.
Okay.
So he's really, really sharp on remembering those types of things. Okay. But what was going on the other side of the glass, as far as like the gear, which guitars used on which song, all of that stuff, that is not Don's bailiwick. He has no memory of any of that stuff because he was not paying attention to that stuff. He was paying attention to, editing, mixing, and, doing what he did for the records, so, and that was something that I didn't quite compute and didn't think about, because I did think, Don was, Ed's right-hand man that whole time. And, he was in there doing that, but I didn't conceptualize, Don was not on the other side of the glass. And he wasn't paying attention to what Eddie was doing specifically as far as the gear. He's listening to what's coming through on the headphones. He's making decisions about mixing and stuff like that. And, so it's yes and no, and it's this and that, but it's going to be exciting to see what he comes up with to say to Greg later on in the next part. But, it's not going to be a panacea, but it is going to be a lot of great, cool stuff that we have never heard before.
And hopefully this is just the beginning. Hopefully Don, speaks to a lot more people and stuff like that. But I mean, just the fact that we'll be able to, find out about the ending of Drop Dead Legs, how he edited that on there, a different jam that they were doing, and he threw that whole outro on there, and how many, and like Jump, there were multiple takes. Did he do that a lot of times with Eddie? A lot of his solos, just multiple things, just record, that he edited together. I mean,
Don, come on here. And we'll give you some questions.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. I mean, some things like that, to answer that question, some things like that are fairly obvious that, he did construct the more constructed solos starting on Fair Warning and afterwards. And that was kind of like, well, not on Diver Down because it was such a quickly made record. There wasn't a lot of edits on that. But, from Fair Warning, 1984, 5150, and OU 812 were his last records with the band. And all of those did have a lot of comped solos, and he would certainly probably, that would be the kind of thing that I'm guessing that he would remember all that stuff real sharply.
To your point there, just real quick, I was listening to Diver Down this week, and and Greg and I we've talked about this. Greg loves Diver Down. That's one of his favorite Van Halen albums, and it takes such a rap because Eddie said he didn't like it, so all the fans are like, well, I don't like it, it's cover everything, but I still stand by it, and I know Greg Renoff agrees with me that album may be the most Van Halen album out of any album, because there's minimal overdubs on it. It was done very quick, the way that Van Halen albums should be made, probably, and also each of the personality of that band shines through on that album, maybe more than any other way. What Dave brought to that is that the humor, that they didn't take themselves too seriously, and how eclectic they were with the Big Bad Bill stuff, and the Happy Trails, and just how they didn't take themselves seriously. And then the burners, like Hang 'em High. I'm not even talking about the covers. I wouldn't have minded Pretty Woman maybe, but but even where All the Good Times Gone, that's a good cover. I guess that's a cover of the Bowie cover. So it's not even really the cover of the Kinks. It's a cover of Bowie, his cover of the Kinks, if you listen to the Bowie version. And but Little Guitars, the full bug is just, if you want to point to, that's one of the songs, like, if you want to point somebody to listen to what Van Halen was all about, that's right up there with I'm the One and all those, because that has that whole, how Eddie plays, that whole, like, the rhythm that nobody can really seem to get, that it shows up on the full bug too, you know what I mean? So I think that's a classic album. It really is, even though it's limited in what we got as far as new material. It's real high quality new material, newer material.
And you and I have talked about this, but and I think Greg agrees on this too, that Secrets, Little Guitars, two of the best songs the band ever did as a whole, two of the best things that Ed ever wrote. I mean, those are golden. Those things are up there with Girl Gone Bad, Push Comes to Shove, Hear About It Later. Those are masterpieces, right there. And then you throw in Cathedral, you throw in the Little Guitars intro. You got, I mean, man, it's so good, and then I think personally, and other people have different opinions on this, but the Hang 'em High, I think that's the ultimate, expression of that song. I prefer that to Last Night.
Right.
The original thing from the demos. I don't really care for that. I think it's a great lyric from Dave, and it's just far fantastic. I love that.
Far better. You're right. The lyrics are great. Everything is just it's amazing. So you know what, everybody, take it easy on Diver Down. It's a great album.
It is, and Al piggybacked on that from Ed too, because Al would say the same thing. He's like, oh, it's the covers and everything. But I think they get, now on the other hand, there are interviews, like there's that one interview that we all saw that Ed did at the Hard Rock with Val, where, Val, and Ed says, well, Running with the Devil doesn't kind of sound like a love song. I think the emotion or the mood of the stuff that I write is pretty obvious, and then he says, but Dave's done some great stuff, and then Val pipes up and says, well, like Secrets, that was something that you had in mind was good, right? And Ed's like, yeah, I think he's great. I think, like that. And he's like, Val had a problem with Dave, and it's interesting to watch that. She was like, yeah, I think Dave sucks as a lyricist, but but she was happy with Secrets, and I think Ed was too. Ed knew Secrets was really, really good, a strong song from the band. It was really good. Oh, so another thing, guys. So I'll send it to you guys if you haven't heard this stuff yet. But recently, I had a pal of mine sent me a bunch of interesting unreleased alternate tracks, unreleased songs, dry mic tracks, alternate takes, false start takes, a bunch of cool stuff. Conks, you may have heard this stuff. I'll send it to you. I want you to tell me if you've heard it already. You may have. If not, I'm going to send it to you. But it's been real interesting. I sent a couple things. Our pal Jim Gostad had not heard it yet. And so hopefully that can help.
Wait, this is all Van Halen?
Yep.
Unreleased Van Halen?
Yep.
Alan, what are your thoughts on it from listening to it? What do you think?
Okay, so the stuff that I've got is between, it's Roth era. So it's all between the demos and 1984. And so there's a lot of gems in there. There's, alternate lyrics, the thing where Dave would kind of bozy bop through things before he got, his final lyrics. But the real cool thing for me to help me with my transcribing and to get really deep into the guitar playing is that there's a couple of things in there that are the dry tracks that are what Eddie heard coming out of his amplifier in the studio with no studio effects, no harmonizer, no reverb, none of that stuff. So it has been nice, and it's basically like listening to Eddie lick your ear like that dog is doing to John, because there's nothing between you and Eddie getting in your ears. It's the amplifier, and it's awesome.
Share the wealth, man. Share the wealth.
I will. If you guys hadn't heard it already, I'm going to send you a copy of it. And, so you get to hear like there's a complete dry guitar track for Unchained.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So, there's harmonizer going through the entire thing, but it's another thing that proves what has been said, and is that the harmonizer was not something that was, it was not in front of the amp. It wasn't something that was recorded at the time the thing was being recorded. It's something that was added in post-production. Okay.
So Alan, in that particular song, Unchained, with it, so you heard it without the harmonizer on there, right?
Yes.
What do you think? Do you think, Dave Friedman was saying, that he thinks he was using a different pickup, like, even back then, like a JB, for instance, we were all talking about that. Do you think it was a hotter pickup in the?
I'm not even going to wade into those waters. I can't even tell you. I'd be interested in this is really for Johnny, because when he hears this, he's more up on the pickups than I am. To me, the dry track has a little more meat, but it is not. And Dweezil is of the same opinion that basically he doesn't really, in the dry tracks, he doesn't hear much difference between the first, second, and third albums. And then there's a little bit of difference on Fair Warning for the dry track. But essentially the same, but maybe something a little bit more, and that could be pickup. Now we know that between 1980, and 81, there were several pickup swaps in the Frankenstein, or through 82 really. So, God knows. I really can't hazard a guess. But what I do know is that listening to that dry track, completely proved that, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you hear it, but it completely proved that whole story about there was a thing online, like at Metro Amp Forum and a bunch of the other places, that the MXR flanger was like added post-production, and that like Don or somebody was clicking it as, after the fact, or some kind of hogwash like that. It's not. The dry track is Eddie heard it coming out of his amplifier. Eddie's in there hitting the phaser. He's hitting the phase 90. He's hitting the flanger himself. It's not any post-production mumbo jumbo, man.
I was going to ask you, in the solo, it sounds like there's an octave thing going on there. Do you
that's
remember
the Eventide? Yeah, that's the Eventide.
That's the Eventide. Okay, so that was post then, obviously.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that Eventide fattened things up a little bit too. Maybe it's a little more pronounced.
Certainly on the sub octave thing, it does. It makes it really fat. So yeah, you hear that on Unchained for sure, and a couple other places. And so that's really interesting. I found. Oh, there you go, Randy. Now Randy's the man. Randy, he's knowledgeable. A hell of a lot of pickup knowledge going on there. He knows what's up, you know. But I mean, I can't even guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I'll be right back.
Okay.
No problem. We know we'll drop them out of the stream. So thanks, Al. It'll be interesting to hear what people have to say. Maybe we should get back after people have listened to this and come back and maybe share some of the sonic thoughts that people have had.
How'd this stuff surface all of a sudden?
Yeah,
it's not all of a sudden. It's been out there for a while, actually. So some of the things there's one thing that you did hear, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to get the guy in trouble or anything. It's been out there for a while. Okay. So it's going. I don't even want to say. I'll say privately to you guys.
Okay.
But I don't want to put it out there on blast right now. The guy, I'll say this: the guy that gave it to me isn't the guy that leaked it in the first place. Okay.
So don't get anybody in trouble.
Yeah, I'm
Please
not.
Don't. We
want to celebrate these guys that are leaking shit.
But I'll say though that one thing that you guys have heard already, if you listen to the Sunset Sound Roundtable, you will hear that episode with Brian Kehew, and it is not Brian Kehew that leaked this stuff or any of the other stuff.
Okay.
I actually thought it was him for a long time, but it is not actually. And he wouldn't do anything to jeopardize anything. He's a smart guy. He's not the guy.
Sure.
But he was involved in the remasters project years and years ago, and he heard these mic tracks. And so on the Sunset Sound Roundtable, there's a little segment where he plays back the overhead mic tracks of the recording of Eruption, where you can hear the full unedited thing from the feedback burst at the end, the feedback burst in between the two middle sections where he stops playing for a second. And then you also hear the complete trail off of the Univox EC80 Echo going. And then you hear Ed play the beginning of You Really Got Me on the Frankenstein after he's finished playing Eruption. Now, Eruption was the very, very last thing recorded for the album. I want to say it was September 9th, 1977 was the last. That was the last thing done for the record. You Really Got Me had already been done a couple days prior. And it then became that they knew that Eruption was going to dovetail into You Really Got Me. And that was by Ed starting You Really Got Me after the Echo trail off on Eruption. So you guys may have heard that. It's on the Sunset Sound Roundtable YouTube channel that most of us have seen episodes with Brian Kehew. So.
Awesome. Fantastic. We look forward to that. So, Jim, you've got some information and some thoughts that you want to share with us regarding a guy called Benny Goodman.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw this thing. It was actually really well done. It was on the Under the Bus network. So, shout out to Caleb and Donnie Ward and Jay. They did a fantastic job on this. You can check this out on Facebook. I think you just do a search and put in Benny Goodman EVH or whatever, and it'll pop up. It's really informative. This guy he ended up buying. Alan, do you know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen that episode. I started watching it, but I didn't get to finish it.
Okay. This guy,
Johnny told me it was going on, but I didn't get a chance to see the whole thing.
Yeah. He basically he bought this guitar from this guy. He runs some kind of like auction house or whatever.
No, I did see that. The one about the BS Kramer.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw most of that. Yeah.
Yes, the BS Kramer, and it's really interesting because he's saying that this guitar was on 84 on all these tours, 84, 5150, OU 812. But there's no pictures of it. He even says himself that it was played exhaustively, but there's no picture. How could that possibly be?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Caleb and Donnie took it down. And I did too. I mean, I had kind of made comments on the guy's video. I was one of the first people when he put so a while ago he had done a video about it, and I pissed on it right away because I could tell it was BS.
Yeah.
And then he came back, made another video going, well, people got all mad, said it was BS. And then he tried to give some fake evidence again. It was ridiculous, man. You know?
Yeah. And like, you know, Donnie Ward did a great job. At the very end, I mean, like the guitar, you know, I think what Donnie was saying was like the guitar could be a Kramer. But the interesting thing is if you see a picture of it, and it could be a Kramer. It doesn't mean it's Eddie's Kramer. You know what I mean? It's interesting because he has this thing where if you look at it, it's worn, right? It's relic, right? But the Floyd Rose is like brand new. The Floyd Rose looks brand new, right? But the interesting thing towards the end of the video that I really loved about this whole discussion, and look, they did. I don't know if Caleb's in this chat. They did a great job on it. Is that if you look at it, it's worn. It's red, you know, red, white, and black. But the red wears out to the white, but the white never wears out to wood, right?
Right.
And Donnie's point is that he feels like almost like a sleuth that like it was originally white, like it was a white guitar with polyurethane or whatever that stuff's called on it, right? So and then the red was put on over it. So the red's going to wear out to white, but the white isn't ever going to wear out.
Right. And Jerry's making that comment. Jerry, you're absolutely right. My suspicion, and I think Donnie and I agree, and probably Conks too, it's odds are that was probably made with some bits and pieces from Kramer that were in Ed's possession. And to me, my opinion, and I think Donnie would say that it's a possibility, you know, to give the guy credit. It could have been one of those things that Zeke slapped together in '86 or later, and kind of put that together and then sold that to somebody and then somehow got it, you know. But the guy's story, he was like, this was used to record 1984 and was on the 1984 tour.
Yeah, just
the Striper.
And then Striper, yeah, that's what it is. The Kramer 5150 Striper. And the
Striper.
The guy that he bought it from, right? The guy that he bought it from wrote a letter saying, hey, I got it from this. He has the story where he went backstage and met Zeke, and there were all these guitars that were painted with 5150 on them, but we all know it's not paint, and there's only one 5150. There's not an arsenal of 5150s.
No,
right?
No, and so we all have seen those pictures. We are all familiar with those pictures.
That's what I mean.
We know that is wrong.
We
know there's a ton of black and white and black, red and white striped guitars that were back there for some reason. God knows why, but there were so many backup Kramers that were brought on the road in '86 just for largesse. And everybody, Randy agrees. That's the deal. And I believe, and God bless Zeke. He was very nice to me. I met some of you guys remember, I met Zeke when I was 14 at the Van Halen show that I went to on the 5150 tour. And Zeke was really nice to me. This was back when I was had I turned 14 yet? I had just turned 14. Okay. So, you know, he gave me a pick, one of Eddie's picks before the show. And then I caught one from Eddie during the show. And so, you know, I have nothing but warmth in my heart for Zeke, but whatever happened, Zeke started doing this kind of stuff where he was pocketing picks and he was selling picks. He was selling stuff, putting guitars together, saying they were played by Ed and, you know, making some cash by sending them, you know, and I believe that was part of what made his exit happen. Now he actually he kept going through, I believe he was on the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour in 92, John?
It was it started in 91, like August
91.
Okay. So he had started on that tour partially, and then Matt came in and was teching for it. And there was a time where it was both Zeke and Matt together. Okay. And then Zeke exited and never came. Well, to my knowledge, I don't think he ever did come back after that.
He's never really spoken anywhere about it either, you know?
Yeah.
Well, before we went live, Andrew was talking to me about, like, you know, hey, you know, maybe this is a good thing. We should talk about this and, you know, put the word out that there's this stuff going on. But, like, the thing is, there's this whole community knows every guitar that was ever in Ed's possession, right? Even down to down to those weird ones, like one that has like Van Halen on it on the headstock that he played once, in '84. There's no way anybody's gonna pass off unless you don't know your Van Halen. There's no way anybody can pass off one of these guitars as real because they're all documented. I mean, there's all these pictures,
Yeah, and Caleb and Donnie nailed them. They did. I feel sorry for the guy because it seems like the guy, parted with some money that he didn't really need to part with. I mean, it's a cool guitar. And it's probably Kramer parts. It's cool. I like it, but was it worth whatever he paid for it? I don't think so.
Probably not.
No. And that's a good point, Alan and Jimmy, because I think people need to be aware of this. If you're a new fan, if you come into Van Halen from a new perspective because you're digging the music and you want to get some memorabilia or awesome guitars, join some Facebook groups, find some YouTube channels, and ask questions, because guys like Alan and Jimmy and John and everybody in the chat here, lots of people will pass on their experience. This community will make sure that you're getting the right information the best they can.
Yeah, talk to Donnie, talk to Jerry Leica, talk to Logan Schenk, talk to Tanner.
Talk to Donnie. Donnie, you can get in touch with Donnie too.
Donnie will see this is the thing about Donnie and Conklin and me and other guys, some and people get pissed off at us a lot when we're in the groups because we'll chime in and say, nope, that's not right, and here's why, and we give you the evidence. But people get really mad at that. But the thing is like, hey, we care enough about people to say, hey, no, this is the deal. Don't be fooled. This is really what's going on, and here's the evidence to support that.
Right, because you tell a lie enough times, it becomes the truth, right? So it's like some of these people on Facebook are just like totally, they live in fantasy land when it comes to this. They have these crazy stories about all this stuff, and they're just totally, they're not real at all. So
yeah. But it was great. Yeah, I did get to see most of that video, Jimmy, and shout out to Caleb and Donnie. Great job on taking that down for. Caleb was cracking me up because Caleb was hilarious the way he did it, because it was like he was approaching it as if he was giving the guy the benefit of the doubt. But Caleb,
they were really fair. They were really fair to the guy. But
they made a good show of being fair to the guy, but they knew they were chopping him off at the knees to begin with before the first word was spoken. So I had to laugh because Caleb has done some acting in his life, and he did some great acting there. The Academy Award goes to Caleb Rappaport because he was all like, guys, there's a Kramer guitar out there. But it was like, go for the jugular, because he was like, he had the evidence at the ready, and then he has Donnie Ward come in and just blast everybody with the machine gun of knowledge. So it was great. I loved it. Yeah, Randy, I think that's a good. You know what? I agree. Yeah, because. If in those parts, that's where I would put it. What do you think, John? That's about a value that I would put.
I was wondering there. I don't. Does it have like an FRT5 on it? I don't know what it has on there.
I don't think so. I think it had it was a more modern one. It was not an FRT5 for sure.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
no, not an FRT5. No. And that's the thing. If you look at it, the guitar looks all beat up, but the Floyd Rose is like straight out of a box. It's brand new. It looks retarded. Anyway, but yeah, if you guys, if you want, go check that out. It's on, Facebook. I don't think it's on YouTube. I think they had to take it down or something like that. It's on Facebook though, but it's really entertaining, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
German Floyd on it. Jerry says there's a German Floyd on the Striper. The Striper.
Yeah, he's always like Striper, and I'm thinking about the band Striper.
Me too. I can't help but think of
I know.
Well, apparently, what the deal was is that at some point in some interview, supposedly Zeke said that word Striper to that guitar. So that's where that kind of got all out of hand. But really, and I don't have that at hand. I don't know where that comes from, but supposedly that's where it came from. It wasn't. But it just is like, oh my God. And it got picked up by the auction house that did the Hot for Teacher guitar, because they called it a Striper. And I'm like, no.
The Striper guitar, Alan, as opposed to the Devil guitar.
Right. And then that gets confused with Kramer's striker, like striker, an airplane.
Yeah, that's what I thought he was. That's what I thought he was saying. Striker.
Yeah, but no, it's like that got confused too. So some people see that and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Has anyone asked Michael Sweet for his opinion?
Michael Sweet might have an opinion. He's a huge Van Halen fan.
Yeah, no, he would have said it doesn't matter to me if it's not yellow and black.
Yeah.
Anyway, Andrew, I'm sending you a link to the Don Landee interview there, Andrew, that you can post. Okay.
Cheers, brother.
Yeah,
I think Holly put it in there too, also earlier.
Okay, good.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
It's a must read, especially before part 2 comes out, so everybody can jump in the pool on this one and read that first before the next part comes out. So,
do you think this might be the foundation or the catalyst for maybe a book coming out, guys? We all know that books are really, really important, and you can generate a bit of income on a book. Do you think that might be something that this project?
Alan does. I think I do too. I think especially because that was so eye-opening, that first part of it. And I mean, if they go in depth of even more with a lot of that, I mean, Don, I'm sure, has some great stories to tell. He's been around for a long time, and he saw a lot. And a really great time too, you know what I mean? The 70s. So I think so. I'm sure maybe it's been discussed.
Yeah, in a couple of spots, like and when Tanner comes on, Tanner can speak a little bit to this because we know that there was a procedure that was done with 2 1176 compressors and clean strats direct on Little Feat Records recording Lowell George. And that's the same or very, very, very similar thing that Don and Ed did for the Women in Love intro on Van Halen 2, using that unfinished 1961 Strat with the Dan Electro neck. So there's some little crossovers there. So things that he had tried out with Doobie Brothers and Little Feat, and eventually wormed their way into what he did with Van Halen. And I found that to be fascinating. And I didn't think about that, but Tanner is absolutely right, because he drew my attention to that, and that's so true. Yeah, it's true, Jerry. He did mention in that interview that he had worked with the Wrecking Crew. Thing that blew my mind was that it was Landee that recorded "Put a Little Love in Your Heart," by Dusty Springfield.
Yes,
he recorded that, which is amazing.
One of the greatest songs recorded. Yeah.
Absolutely, 110%. So it blew my mind. I was like, "Oh,
wow, yeah,
because we'd always been fed Doobie Brothers, Van Halen, Van Morrison. He worked with Van Morrison a bit and stuff like that. But it's just like, wow, when you see the breadth of his work, it's like I would definitely read that book for sure.
Oh, for sure. And it was interesting. We knew about from I don't know if it was in Van Halen Rising or in the Ted Templeman book, but Greg had written in there that about Don being the guy that did the stereo flanging on Sky Pilot by the Animals.
Right, which was like the first time that was ever done, right? Something like that.
It was almost the first time it was ever done. I kind of, when the Beatles had done that, but the timeline that I'm reckoning is somewhere I can't. It was done before that, but the real deep, really super cool tape flanging type of thing that we all think of. I think the end of Axis Bold as Love that Eddie Kramer did with that big whooshing flanger thing came about 6 months before Sky Pilot. And then right after Sky Pilot, about another 6 or 7 months later, was Open My Eyes by the Nazz with Todd Rundgren, who had that going as well. Is that really similar crazy flanging sound? So I don't know the history of who actually started it, but those are among the very first, and those are awesome. And it was very interesting in this article to hear Don describe the technique, because Don was doing it with 2 turntables, whereas other people were doing it with tape machines,
right?
And the Beatles were doing it with tape loops going around the mic stands, and putting their hands on the tape machines as it's playing back, right?
Yeah.
But with Don, it was like he described having two acetate copies, I guess, of LPs going of the same track, and then putting his hand on one like a DJ scratch artist, and kind of like slowing one down and getting that slight whoosh between the two, and you're controlling it physically. And it's super cool to read about that in the article.
Yeah, it's so weird when techniques like that. It still happens even now, where it's almost like somebody does something, and then obviously other engineers start to you ever notice that you can almost tell sometimes records what almost to the year they were from, like in the 70s even, and stuff like that, because you'll hear something that was done on another record at that same period. You could tell these guys are keenly aware of what other engineers and things are doing on these records.
Oh, totally.
Pinpoint.
Totally.
That sounds like, I guarantee that's probably 1977, 78 or something. Like, you can always do that, I think,
Yeah, and how some people will hear something on a record and then figure it out and copy it.
Right.
And that was the thing. Like Jimmy Page always talks about how he invented backwards echo. And like, if you look at the timeline of everything, he had done backwards echo on a horn track for a song called 10 Little Indians, which was the B-side of a Yardbirds single when he was in the Yardbirds. And then shortly after that, an engineer from Deep Purple or so, some other person lifted it, put it on their record. And then all of a sudden people are doing backwards echo, and you hear that backwards echo on the slide bits of Whole Lotta Love and Robert's vocal on Whole Lotta Love and a couple other play. And then you hear it on You Shook Me on Robert's vocal and some of the guitar parts. So yeah, backwards echo is something that he created, but the very first time it was on that single, and then other people started doing it after that. Right.
It's wild. And
that's an obscure single. Even back then, nobody gave a damn about 10 Little Indians by the Yardbirds back then. But somebody was paying attention, and it's the engineers are listening to that stuff, and they're going, "Ooh, that's a good one." I'm gonna swipe that.
That is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I wanted to mention too. So, obviously next week, October 6th, is the anniversary of Eddie's death, and also the box set is coming out of the remasters. They released another single, I guess, the other day. Crossing Over was released, but I mean, I guess I'm interested to hear what I've heard so far. I know we all know Alan after 1989. He gets off the bus. That's his last stop. And there.
But as I always remind Johnny, I love 5150 and OU812, and I'm 100% on board the bus with that one. And so I'm interested to hear. Obviously, we all know about OU812 was the one that really needed the most help in terms of mastering and stuff. So I hope that they come through with that. Now, the box set, I believe, is just vinyl, though, right? There's not a CD element.
So far.
I'm not sure.
So far.
I don't think.
I'm sure, Alan. I'm sure from a marketing point of view, they'll release this in stages. But I'm sure. It would be a disaster if they just did it on vinyl. But look, I agree with you guys. I think it's going to be a fascinating situation for Van Halen fans over the next couple of weeks. I understand from speaking to Keith Campbell, they're shipping the pre-orders now.
Oh, wow. I'll say it is a little, it's great that they're finally doing it. It had to be done, I guess, to make the whole catalog pretty much, seamless as far as that. But it is a little disappointing. You would hope they would do something special. You know what I mean? But
well, we know that the mobile fidelity versions of the Roth albums are coming. That the first album is about to be, it's on pre-order. It's about to be going. Now, I have the original mobile fidelity gold master disc recording of the first album. Or, well, it wasn't MoFi, actually. It was DCC Compact Classics was the people that did that. And that's still the best version of the first album that I've ever heard, over and above any vinyl master that I've heard. I thought it was excellent, and I still love it. And it's pretty rare now. I got it for like $50 years ago. And, man, you try to find one of those on eBay, man, people are going nuts. Hundreds of dollars for this CD, But I'm looking forward to it's going to be Blu-ray. I don't think it's going to be mixed for Atmos or any of that kind of nonsense. I think, but that's going to be really, really interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, to the point, and I think Johnny and I and maybe even Andrew and Jimmy, we might have talked about this before, but I think that the quality of OU812 is totally underserved. And I know I'm not alone on this. This is like most Van Halen fans agree. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was like Don was tired or who did the mastering on it. I think it might have even been like, do you know who did the actual mastering, Johnny?
I thought Don did. It's so weird because they said Don did the mastered 1984. And I think even in Greg's book, it said it. They were, Ted took another copy and was, the tapes in, was having it. An in-house guy at I forget it was a pretty well-known guy too that
not Bob Ludwig, was it?
No.
Yeah.
Bob Ludwig was Master Disc. Actually my neighbor owns Master Disc now, believe it or not.
No way.
Oh my God. I see him with headphones on mowing his lawn, and it's so funny because I'm like, yeah, protect those ears, bro. You know what I mean? I don't even really know him, but he lives a couple of houses down. But I know he owns Master Disc. He bought it. Yeah, he worked under Bob Ludwig. He was like his apprentice. Then he bought the business, and then they he actually has a warehouse space now. That's where it's at. We're in the suburbs of the city, but that's he's done some great, amazing albums too. I mean, you look at that, it's pretty impressive, the stuff that this guy himself has mastered. But he owns the thing now. But every time I see him mow the lawn, he's got his things on. I go, good, keep those ears fresh,
Wow, anyway. That's awesome.
Yeah, right on his ride-on lawnmower or whatever he's on over there.
Oh my God!
But yeah, I forget who it was, but it was a pretty well-known guy mastering it. And I think it says that on 1984 on the credits said it was mastered by I can't think of the guy's name right now, but I thought in even in Greg's book that he said that Don, we know Don used to master everything. You know what I mean? He learned that skill. I think it's even touched on in the article that we're discussing. But so I'm assuming Don mastered OU812. I mean, you guys talk amongst yourselves. Let me take a look on Wikipedia and see if
good idea. Good idea. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he was getting at the end of his rope. I know Don just stopped working after that, and I don't know if he was like so tired of he was just asleep at the wheel and was ready to get off the train and he just he didn't. I don't feel if he was the one that did the mastering. Something was just way, way, way off. It's real kind of like a muffled cloud over the whole album. And I really, really like the album a lot. It's to me, I think 5150 is a better album, but I do really appreciate a lot of stuff on OU812. And I hope that this new thing, is going to serve it better. And then I do actually appreciate the way they're rolling this stuff out, because to me, they're putting out the junk first, kind of.
And also, Alan, what they're doing as well, when they release a song, Sammy and Michael are getting together on social media and they're talking about, so they're building a whole process, which I think is really clever and really smart. They're not just dropping it, so they've been involved in this whole package clearly right from the get-go. So that's always got to be a great thing, surely.
Yeah. And they would have to release that stuff eventually. And to me, I think, no one was really clamoring to hear a remastered version of a fake live album. I don't think anybody was really like, I can't wait to get the remaster of Right Here, Right Now. But
if it's the only thing out there, people are going to buy it.
Yeah. And they've got to do it. They're going to do the Sammy era, go ahead and do all that. And then, get to the meat of what the majority of people really, want to hear, which is, I'm not an either or guy, because again, I put 5150 and OU812 among the best Van Halen albums. To me, it's all the same, but there is clearly a lot of people interested in the Roth stuff, and more so in terms of things like I've heard that I'll send to you guys a couple of things, and more so of the other stuff that I know is actually aware. People had talked about the existence of alternate tracks, alternate takes, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really put a lot of stock in that until I started talking with Dweezil, and he told me about the stuff that he'd heard. So he's heard a lot of alternate takes and the multiple takes of things that I think I told some of you guys when I had first started talking to Dweezil, he had told me about hearing the takes of Spanish Fly. And the deal was there were, I think Dweezil had said he had counted 26 takes.
Wow.
And on the 25th take ended up being the one that they kept. And then he did another take after that, and then they stopped. And it was a frustrating piece. Ed was having a lot of trouble doing that. And a lot of people will point to Spanish Fly and go, wow, look what an inhuman freak Eddie is. He's an alien. How could he do that on an acoustic guitar, on a nylon string acoustic guitar? I'll never be able to play that. Well, Eddie had trouble playing that tune. And not only is the final take loaded with a bunch of mistakes that are almost impossible to transcribe, which is that I haven't transcribed that piece because it's almost, and I've talked to you guys about this before, it's virtually impossible to transcribe the number of mistakes that are in that tune.
There's one particular part, you know what I'm talking about. It's like about 3/4 of the way through, and you can hear like pops and different. It's just like he miss it. He's like
there's tons of them, like from start to finish. There's tons of them, even in the tapping sections, which is easy to pull off. But I mean, man, it's a lot. And so it was enlightening to hear that from Dweezil. And he in conversation, he was like, we were talking about, because Ed was a human, and he was frustrated with that. And he actually said that you can hear in between takes that Alex was in the control room as he's trying to lay down Spanish Fly, and you can hear Alex encouraging him and saying, no, man, you got it. It's Al is trying to encourage Ed, because Ed is, you can hear him go, F, Ed is mad, that he's not able to execute this to what he wants. And he's getting frustrated, and he's like wanting to quit, but doing takes, and Al's there encouraging him to get it. You can do it. No, you've almost got it. You can do it. He's saying stuff like this, or no, faster, you can do it faster, or slow down the tempo. It's too fast or something, so Al's guiding him in there. It's really fascinating. So that was really cool to hear that, and to think of that well-known track, and it sounds so cool. And I'm not saying that it stinks, because there's a lot of mistakes in it. It's great. It sounds wonderful. There's a whole feel and just excitement to it that I think is great. But to know the process behind it, and the fact that there was 26 takes and the 25th was the one, is wonderful to hear that.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, Brad is challenging me. I love you, Brad. I love you, brother. I don't love you that much. Challenge not accepted. Never.
No, he won't, Brad. He won't bite. We've had this discussion before. Alan will just right down when it comes to that. It's like after 1989, that's it.
Yeah, I'll extend it, and I did, because of that recent find of the Cabo Wabo footage, the opening in 1991. Because they're playing OU812 and 5150 material, and like Ed's whipped out the vintage Strat for whatever, when it's finish what you started, and best of both worlds and stuff like that. So I'm like, I'll bite on that. So I'll amend it to 1991 at the Cabo Wabo opening, but it's a hard pass on everything after that moment. So
a lot of people having a few laughs, Sal, in the chat. Obviously, Brad's replied back with some laughs. Holly thinks it's hilarious. So do your co-hosts here. Great challenge, though.
Real quick. Bobby had a mastered OU812, and Greg Geller mastered 1984. So Don didn't master either, though. So
okay. Well, Don didn't master right here, right now either, but he went back and did the mastering on the current release.
Right.
And so that's rather interesting to me that Don ended up doing masters of Sammy material. That's crazy to me. I don't even know how they got him to do that, or
I don't know. You know what? I just have a feeling about this whole thing, because I just, in my back of my head, I just always know that Eddie and Alex resisted letting Warner Brothers put out any remasters of the Sammy era, because they were very angry with Sammy Hagar, and they didn't want him making any money off their name. They felt he used their name to become a zillionaire with the tequila money and everything like that. And so I get it from their point of view, but they couldn't do it forever. I'm sure Warner Brothers said, hey, we want to do this. It's, we're going to do it. You know what I mean? But that's why I think that there's no new material, because Sammy himself said on Instagram that there's a completed song that we all know from the Twister soundtrack that they didn't use. He said it's like a mid-tempo kind of ballady kind of song. He goes, it's completely done. Everything's done. He goes, and at that time he said that will be on these things, but somewhere along the line, I almost feel like Alex was just not into it. Just like, you know what, put it out, but keep it stripped down and nothing special. I don't know. Maybe that's just in my head, but it was kind of disappointing because the fourth vinyl LP, it's like the rarities, and I mentioned it before that they're including Baluchitherium from Balance as a rarity because it wasn't on the vinyl album that nobody bought in 1995. Anyway, everybody was only buying CDs. Look at Alan.
Balucha. Hey, I love it. Hey, whatever. Floats other people's votes. No big deal. I love you if you love it. No disrespect to anybody.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's weird. Like, to me, I hate, and I know, Alan, you like some of that early. I hate the drum sound on every Van Halen album up until Diver Down. I hate it. Alex's voice did not come to fruition. His snare, I really think the first time you really experience Alex's snare is on Diver Down. And then on 1984, Eddie mentioned that the Simmons drums, for what they were actually pretty good. And they were. I think that's a signature Alex sound. That Simmons kick drum sounds amazing. I know Tanner, he's messing around with that sound. It just sounds.
And great. In that interview that we're talking about, Don repeats that Alex also, and probably Eddie, felt like the drum sound was to their satisfaction on 1984, but on nothing else. And so, funny? Isn't that funny that it would be the electronic drums?
Yeah, it's right. But it's weird because, when I listened to 1984 and then 5150, so it must have been the 16 track on 5150 also. I don't think they had upgraded at that point.
No.
But I feel like 1984 has way more fidelity than 5150. It just doesn't sound. It doesn't breathe as much. It's not as open sounding, but I don't know if it's because there's so much drenched in harmonizer. And 1984 was completely the opposite. There was harmonizer on it, but the guitar sound was very clean, and it just seemed more ambient, everything on there. And I know the Simmons toms make it sound dated on 5150 a bit, but it just does not have that openness like that. I feel like 1984 had. It's weird.
I remember you saying that to me, and I actually feel like the guitar sound on 5150 is, what's the word I'm looking for? I think fidelity is the word. I actually think it's higher fidelity on 5150 than it is on 1984.
Yeah, maybe I'm using the wrong word. Maybe it's dense. It's more dense. It's just that whole album sounds more dense.
It is
like when they say in a vinyl album they could only put 40 minutes or something like that. That was the max on there. And then you hear albums bands that put more than that on there, and it just doesn't have that. It doesn't have that airiness to it. You could just tell it's kind of too much. It's squeezed,
Right.
I get that feeling from 5150, but 1984, it's weird. Same studio, pretty much the same setup. I mean, but obviously the guitar is drenched in the harmonizer on that one, and
heavy-handed, but yet still on 5150 and OU812, it was still done after the fact,
right?
And we were talking also about For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. I don't know if you ever came up with anything. My remembrance, and I think I asked Tanner about it, and he seems to recall the same thing, was that they did start recording with the wet, dry, wet, actual physical cabinets in the room rather than mix in the Eventide after the fact.
I couldn't find anything on that, and I kind of vaguely recall Eddie talking about that, so maybe it's true. I know Tanner had a picture of a 1996 era when they did Humans Being, and there were 3 cabinets. He was showing that, but. I mean, Eddie would always say that he only recorded with 1 cabinet. That's all I ever use, and 1 or 2 mics. I know he'd use 2 mics on other things, but on that album, he said Andy Johns wanted, a little more bottom end or something. So he said, we'll just put another mic on it. So they were 2 mics on that album. But
there's 2 mics on so this is the thing and I think we pointed this out in that picture from Jamie's crying session. There's 2 mics on the cabinet. There's one up top, and then though you can't see the mic and the other speaker on the bottom of the cabinet, you can see that the mic stand has two arms. So there's one going down here and one that you can see up top. So there's two speakers mic'd there on the first album, and I believe that they did that. They continued that all the way through.
Yeah, but I guess they must have started with one mic on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, and Eddie just said, "Well, Andy was looking for." He said, "Just throw another mic on it," which is what they wound up doing on there too. But I know you don't really care for that sound.
There's interesting things on that record. You had I had forgotten, and I had read it in the interviews. And I remember when the album came out, and I wanted to get excited, and I wanted to like Run Around and Pound Cake, and I kind of liked that Run Around. That I kind of thought that was all right. I wanted to like it, but no, I can't anymore. But at the time, I was trying to get into it, and I could appreciate that kind of cool thing. And you reminded me that was the Telly and the Jerry Jones Longhorn bass, and then later on he had gotten the double neck to play that. So that's kind of, it's a cool sound. I mean, if you like that sort of thing.
Yeah, what it is. I think one of the big things to me is I think on that album, as far as the drums, to me that was. I like that Andy John, Led Zeppelin kind of thing, and they finally come, especially coming from OU812 drums to that. It's just like night and day.
I'll agree with you on that because I do, but I'll give it up 100%. And I'm not a fan of Andy John's, but I do think that the drum sound on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge is a lot better than on a lot of the other records. It's good, it's reverby and stuff, and it's a clear attempt to kind of get Bonham-esque. But to me, Andy Johns was, to me, in my opinion, from everything that I've read, his interviews, and, he liked to toot his own horn. He liked to overstate his importance on Led Zeppelin's recordings. He was an engineer on a couple of the albums, but he wasn't even the only engineer on those albums. He'll talk about Physical Graffiti, but Ron Nevison Nevison was the other engineer, and that guy was a great engineer. And like, I can hear the things that Ron Nevison has done after that are powerful and really, really good. And then I've heard stuff that Andy Johns did, and I'm like,
yeah, well, you're right, because Andy Johns did a lot of these cheesy metal bands like Cinderella and things like that. Yes. But I also think Ron Nevison, like, you listen to that Heart stuff that he did, I hate the drum. Kiss and Heart, I mean, they sound like this. Denny Carmassi was a drummer on the Heart albums, I guess. It's the Kiss albums. It sounded like exactly the same drum sound. I just hated that.
But Ron Nevison. I'll agree with you on those. But go listen to the Starship albums with Craig Chaquico and what's
Marty Ballin?
Yeah. Well, those records, but all the way through to like the Winds of Change album in like '81 or whatever. He was the guy that was. I'm trying to think about oh shit, I'm totally blanking on the guy's name. The British drummer, Ainsley Dunbar.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, Ainsley played on those earlier Starship records, like Jane and those really powerful, great drum sounds on those.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I think later on, as we got into the late '80s and '90s, it was that cheesy airplane hangar drums. It was just like, listen to any of those cheesy heavy metal, Dokken and all these bands like that. It's just like the drum sound is just like, it's just horrible.
And it's an attempt to get John Bonham in the room,
right?
But they missed the point of John Bonham. They missed completely. Point. It's like, let's put reverb. Let's Phil Collins the crap out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's great for Phil Collins, but not anybody else.
Right. And obviously, Alex had a strong enough personality that he could tell Andy, and then the next album, Balance, that he took I guess Bruce Fairbairn out to dinner over a bottle of wine, told him, I don't want any electronic reverb on the album at all. I only want ambient. So he's like, but to their credit also on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, I know where that tape storage is now in there. It used to be a separate rooms in there. And I know they had, I forget, it was like 25 mics on the kit and ambient mics in that room, in those storage rooms too, to pick up that just to pick up the room sound of it. So I almost think it was too much, and I think they thought it was too much also. I did kind of detect a little complaint about Andy, like, oh, it was a little bit too much on that album, of that ambient sound. And if you notice on Balance, they kind of took it back a little bit. It balanced the drums sound great too. I just don't think I love Alex's snare. Like, I'll Wait. I think that's the perfect Alex snare. And I don't think the later albums like had that, like Balance. It was different. It just sounded different. I don't know. But
I remember you had told me about your love of I'll Wait, and I can go with that. Now I go back to Fair Warning though, because to me, Alex's drum sound got really good on Fair Warning. When I'm hearing the snare crack on This Is Love, I'm like, that's it. That's my Alex drum sound.
You can hear I think you can start to hear it on that album, but it was more on every tune I think on like Diver Down. It was dialed in, like his personality. That snare was there. It was just more prevalent, more noticeable. But I could hear it. You're right, on Fair Warning, you could hear it, but it wasn't. I just didn't think he found his voice completely. Like Eddie's voice was there from the first album. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's why I prefer the drums on the later albums. I hate the Van Halen 2. I think the drum sound is terrible. I think it sounds better on Van Halen 1 than Van Halen 2.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's that whole British versus American, engineering type of thing. Like Bonham, it's timeless. It's to this day, bands still try to get that sound because it's just an ambient drum,
Okay, but I'll say this: Led Zeppelin 2 was recorded almost not entirely, about half in America and half in Britain. So like Moby Dick, for instance, was recorded at Mystic Studios in Los Angeles, and there's some great pictures of the few times that photographers were allowed in the studio for Zeppelin recordings. You can see that, and you can see the full mic setup that was done for Killing Floor and Moby Dick and the Screamin' Lord Sutch and Heavy Friends LP between April and May of 1969. They did a lot of those sessions in that studio when they were, in the LA area. And that was American engineers that were working on that. They weren't carting Eddie Kramer around or anything. Eddie Kramer was did the mixing on Led Zeppelin 2 and everything. So that's another great year. And, but yeah, that I totally get what you're saying though.
There is like, if you compare like the Eagles, and then you compare like Led Zeppelin, at the Eagles, it sounds like cardboard boxes. You know what I mean? That the drums, and I think that kind of thing was like, oh, we'll fix it in the mix. We'll put a little reverb on it in the mix or something like that. I just thought the American, if you listen to those any album from the 70s, American rock bands generally, as a general thing, is just the production. It was completely different than like the British sound, which was more ambient and just like they got it more natural kind of sounding. It wasn't anything equipment wise involved really as much with that, but also I guess that's it. So, and I think Van Halen in a way is a product of that, because Don was in California in the in the 70s and stuff like that, and the way they mic the drums up and stuff like that. I mean, and whenever I see any band in the studio with the drums without any bottom heads on it, I kind of cringe. Although Phil Collins made a, that's his signature sound, like that. But I don't know. It was just the 70s were a tough time, I think, for drums. Drum sounds,
and they were a great time for drums, though, because like when they were great, they were great.
Right. Exactly.
When somebody nailed it, it was like, oh, this is the stuff. And then we never.
And they stood out because there was so much bad sounding drums in the 70s, and particularly American bands. I think, I don't know. I just have this thing for that era. It was just like,
No, and I'm not pissing on some of the other, there's over the top reverb and stuff from the 80s that on drums that I really like. Okay, so and I love the gated compression and stuff on the Phil Collins thing. I love that. And man, to be honest, I get my big toe shoots up in my boot when I listen to the Power Station album and hear Bang a Gong and Some Like It Hot, and it's overproduced. Yeah. And it's them trying to Bonhamize Tony Thompson, but man, I think it worked. And that record,
I agree with you, but I think that worked because of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it was the bass playing and stuff. Everything was just like, and the producer Bernard Edwards was
God, it was such a good record. That's a whole other thing that I could talk about. The Power Station record. Me and Johnny Bean, we would go on about that because man, Power Station was such a big deal to me when that record came out. ooh, man, I was right in it. And I'm talking about that whole record from top to bottom is really good. Really good. Go back and listen to that record. And it's everybody's shining on that, from Bernard to everyone. And
I actually think Bernard played a little bass on certain things too.
Just about to say that. So Bernard, and I say this story a lot, Bernard Edwards is the guy that played all the bass solos on Bang a Gone, Get It On.
Yeah.
So, and in that summer of 1985, Rolling Stone came out with their, list of, best bass player, best guitar player, and, you can guess who the best guitar player was. Right. Damn well it was Eddie Van Halen in 1985. And, but John Taylor won best bass player on the strength of Bang a Gone, Get It On. But it was Bernard Edwards. And there's video of him recording it in the little electronic press kit that they did back then, before there were electronic press kits. They did a thing. You could see Bernard laying it down.
I'll cut John Taylor some slack because that was his hero, and he got to work with his hero. So there, and it's funny. I used to work with one of Bernard's sons.
Really?
And, Mike Edwards, and I used to tell him all the time whenever I would hear his father's bass line from the Sugar Hill Gang and all that. When they took what song was it?
Good Times.
Good Times.
Yeah.
So anytime I would hear Good Times in a commercial, I'd come in. I go, Mike, you're gonna be getting a royalty check, Mike. There's so and so's using this. He's like. He told me, he goes, I should hire you. He goes, because you pick out every time it's on there. He goes, you come in and tell me like that.
Go sue them. And it's like another one bites the dust. Yeah. There are so many modern songs, actually current songs, like by people like Dua Lipa and Sia and stuff like that just rip off completely, the Good Times bass line. I mean, stone cold, like not even trying to fake it.
No, not even, right.
And then of course you did, the thing that Nile did with Daft Punk, the Random Access Memories album, and that's an entire Chic tribute, to the whole operation, and it's fantastic. Chic
Nile's amazing too. I knew he played with Bowie on Let's Dance and stuff like that, but I always thought that was Stevie Ray and like Cat People. I don't know if we talked about that at the very beginning. But that's actually Nile. I found this out more recently. I thought it was Stevie Ray Vaughan playing that part.
No, Stevie played on Let's Dance. It was the title song, Let's Dance, as John says. The rhythm guitar is entirely Nile Rodgers. The lead guitar is entirely Stevie Ray Vaughan. China Girl has some of Stevie's rhythm in there, but that's also mostly Nile on the rhythm guitar too. Yeah, and they're both playing Strats, which kind of confuses it a little bit,
Right.
Yeah. Well, not Nile was the genius as far as the production was concerned, wasn't he?
He still is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's still amazing and still does cool things, and it's a sad, man. Bernard Edwards is so cool. Yeah. There's no bass player that doesn't, that I don't think that can't recognize it. I have some friends that are like, metal people, and stuff that don't get it. But Bernard is a heavy hitter, man. God, he's so good. And he's as a producer, as a writer, because Bernard's writing music with Nile. It's not like Nile wrote it all. It's like they were partners and they wrote things together. And really, Bernard and Nile will tell you, and he says in interviews, it's really like Bernard was sort of the mastermind, and Nile was kind of. It wasn't a Lennon McCartney. It was the mastermind was Bernard, and then Nile was kind of trying to keep up with him.
Right. It's just amazing though. But if you look back, like that Diana Ross song, "I'm Coming Out," that's Bernard and Nile on that too. It's like there's so many records like that, but you can start to pick it out now. It's like I think if you listen, it's like that sounds like Nile Rodgers, like Steve Winwood, "Higher Love." You hear that part when Chaka Khan's singing at the end. It's like
so good. So good. And then you hear the Duran Arcadia, "So Red the Rose,"
And you watch him play live, and he's just an effortless bass player, as well. He's not, doesn't seem to be, trying. It's drives you crazy.
Sad that the way he died and everything like that. But I would always say to Mike, man, you got to be making some serious coin off this stuff. He goes, dude, there's five kids, okay?
Yeah. In the state of music now is not what it was, and so nobody's making any money on royalties really anymore. Exactly. But at the time, back in the day, those guys were banking, man. Bernard liked to spend money too. He liked to make money, but he spent a lot of money. According to Niall, it was like, yeah, he would spend a lot of money and wasn't so good with his money. And then of course it was a different time where having the business together was tough. Now everybody's got sort of the ancillary stuff down because there's no money to be made with music. It's the ancillary stuff that people make the money on. And it's like when you read in the Noel Monk book, it's like, Van Halen didn't make any money except when they sold the T-shirts,
right.
And that's
correct.
Yeah. And then the guys say that too about how, the point systems on the record, even back then, it was all the record company that was getting all the money back, and then again, the bands owed the record money.
Well, exactly. They owed. That's why the Police were smart. They paid for they worked 2 and 3 jobs and they recorded their first album and they didn't take a dime advance from the record company. So when the album started to sell, Roxanne took off, they actually made the money. They said they were older though to that though. Sting was like 27, so they were a little wiser. And
and Andy I believe Andy's older than Sting by a couple of years. I mean, I
think he's almost 10 or 8 or 9 or 10 years older.
Yeah.
Did I think 9 years older. He's 81.
I don't know. In your area, did you get to see Andy's solo show? I think Johnny saw it.
Yeah, he was in Connecticut, Jimmy, over by you in Ridgefield Playhouse. I wanted to go bad, but I wasn't going to be around that night, so. But
yeah, he came to the Heights Theater here in Houston, and I didn't get to catch it either. I'm sad that I missed it, but yeah, he did some kind of reworked stuff in the kind of a similar way that where Stuart Copeland's doing his Police Deranged things, and Andy's doing like a multimedia mixed media thing with his photography and the Police songs and different arrangements and stuff.
Andy said some nice things about Eddie. I don't know if you guys heard that. Which is kind of cool. Yeah, I forgot who did the interview with him. I forget somebody. I don't
know who did the interview, but I remember Eddie was
Johnny. It was Johnny Bean that did the interview with Andy. And, because it took off. There were like clips all over, and the media, other metal and places like that, picked up on it. But
good for Johnny, man. I'm glad that got
very
out there.
Complimentary things. He didn't like diss Eddie like a lot of other people, just kind of blow
like the way Eddie dissed him, because Eddie dissed Andy Summers. We know and he was kind of accurate in a way because Andy was he was playing the role of the traditional role of the bass player in the band, because it was Andy that was holding down the steady tempo and playing the simpler things. And then of course he's known for the textural stuff that he did in the Police, but it was Stewart was the instrumental genius going off crazy. And then Sting is singing his ass off. And, also part of that engine with Stewart and rolling with that tempo and controlling the whole rhythm section and everything. But, Eddie was not impressed with Andy Summers. He was just like, well, it just sounds like he's got his flanger on. And that's pretty much it. And then he would talk about the echo things. He's like, well, that's just the thing I do with Cathedral. It's like no big deal,
Well, he said about the Edge too. Like I like the echo.
He likes his echo, doesn't he? Yeah. But which was kind of a halfway diss. But then Eddie did kind of clarify. But that's great because that's down to songwriting. He said, and that's right. To Eddie's credit, it was like, those guys were more song oriented than it was about the ripping the leads.
I think Eddie was very competitive when he was younger. As he got older, I think he was a little more, because you look back, he took a lot of shots at quite a few people along the way. You know what I mean? It was like the other day, Pete Townsend, apparently he came away unscathed, because I know Eddie loved Live at Leeds and stuff like that. And so Pete Townsend, who is notoriously, he went after his own band member. You know what I mean? He's only ever had nice things to say about Eddie. You know what I mean? He would he took shots at Roth about poor Eddie. This poor guy, having to deal with that guy every night. But
yeah, man. Oh God. No, there's another thing. Here we're going off on all kinds of tangents, but you mentioned Pete, and it's like I was watching Tom Bukovac's channel today, and man, something happens every once in a while, and it reminds me of how great that Empty Glass album is. And man, Rough Boys is such a killer track. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And of course it's like, it's kind of some weird subject matter in the lyrics and stuff. Not my cup of tea in that sense, but it's still great. The music is fantastic and the lyrics are great, and it goes well with the music and everything. Man, listen to Rough Boys again. What a colossal track that is, man.
You know what? Like the stuff that I really love about Townsend, because they didn't have sequencers back then, but he was able to do like sequence, like Eminence Front and Won't Get Fooled Again. I mean, that's like, and you could tell Eddie was into that kind of stuff too, because that the OB8 had the, the arpeggiator with the, the 16th notes going constantly. And he did that quite a bit of stuff with that, and Mine All Mine and stuff like that. So
Pete
Pete
was doing loops back then, and he would set that up, and he was doing the earliest stuff with that, and it was the fat analog synths and stuff. So it's like you can see how that, and it was also him being the leader and the guitar player and the songwriter of the band, was cool. It wasn't the same thing as like, say, when was it Jim Pusey was the piano player in Van Halen for a hot minute, where Eddie was kind of like, this guy's bothering me. He's in my space. He wanted to be in control, and he couldn't hang with having somebody else filling up where he wanted to fill up and stuff. But when it's Pete Townsend doing it, and it's like a tape machine, or like later on, and that was the logic that Eddie used for later on getting the guy from Night Ranger to stand behind a curtain to actually play the keyboard parts, so that but it would still look like it was just the four guys, because that's what Townsend did. He had John Bundrick to come and play the synthesizer parts and stuff, and the keys and all that kind of stuff. So Eddie kind of used that as a logic to be like, well, it's okay to use sequencers and stuff. So that's when they started doing that.
I actually preferred that. I didn't mind the sequencers, because you know what? It's like, I don't like that Aerosmith has it's like, especially that era of bands, it's like they're like superheroes, the names of all the guys, and it's just like, I don't want to see anybody else. The man behind the curtain. I want to see them. You know what I mean? So
yeah. I saw that Permanent Vacation tour with Aerosmith, and that was the first one. That was the first major rock tour that used sequencers,
right?
For backing vocals, and like all their kind of that whole production value on Permanent Vacation, and then later on Pump, that had things like that almost semi hip hop scratched dude looks like a lady intro thing, and if you go on YouTube, you can actually see the entire Permanent Vacation professionally shot show from the Houston Summit, where me and my friend Kevin Dodds went to see that show when we were 15 years old. And it's full professional quality, and it's kick ass.
The sound is good. The sound is good. Yeah.
The sound is good, and they're good, and they're in their prime, man. Yeah. And Dokken opened the show, and Dokken was suffering from the opening act thing, where they got no love from the PA, and Lynch's tone was god.
They had a career of that, Monsters of Rock, when they had to open up from basically come out before or after Metallica, and that was not a good not a good time for Dokken,
No, and Don's voice was not good back then either, so his singing was terrible. I mean, and Lynch's tone was god awful. I mean, it was bad, just bad. I went and got a pick from the Lynch's guitar tech before the show. I don't know why people didn't think to do this, but I did this back then. That's why I went up and met up with Zeke, because I for my Van Halen show, I had gotten some incredible seats right in front of Eddie. I got scalp tickets for $150 each, which was a lot of money back in 1986 for a 14-year-old kid. But I was able to work it off. My mom bought them for me, and then I worked it off with some extra lawn work and this, that, and the other. But, I was one of the few people in the building that recognized Zeke. So I walked right up to him and go, "Hey, I saw you in Guitar for the Practicing Musician, rah, 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 rah." And then I don't think I even asked him for it. I said, "Oh, I'd love to get a pick. You don't have any picks?" And he said, "Hold on. Don't tell anybody." He comes and gives me a pick,
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
And then later on in the show, during the guitar solo segment, I caught one from Edward. And then I caught, this night was incredible. And then I caught two from Michael Anthony during that show too. I got a red one and a fluorescent green pick from Mike.
I got one Michael Anthony from the 5150 tour. I got one from him that tour.
But, I mean, so you and I would have been more. I think you got a couple years on me, but
you're a baby, Alan. You're a baby.
I was 14 then. So how old were you in 1986?
86. I was like 20.
Holy smokes. Yeah, so I'm just like a little kid, and I had my girlfriend with me. So this is like my first real, hot and heavy girlfriend and stuff. So when I was I had just started high school, barely started high school. And this is a girl that I was seeing like since I was in 8th grade. And so she was like belle of the ball, man. We're going to see, Van Halen in the front row, man, right in front of Eddie Van Halen, and it's like, Oh man, nobody was
Hot
cooler than
day.
me that night. You know,
Hot day now.
Yeah.
man, something else. And it was funny too because I had seen this other chick before her, and
Wow.
that girl came to the show, but she was in the nosebleeds. Somebody else,
Oh,
you know,
So Alan said, see what you're missing out on?
yeah,
what you missing, babe?
yeah. Well, no, I did better because the one that I was with was way hotter, man. You know, but yeah, that was back in the day. So this is when I'm like, 12, 13, 14 years old, man. Oh gosh.
All right, you want to feel really old? Randy Price just said, I wasn't alive in 1986.
Oh,
And never mind Tanner.
Forget it. Tanner was not alive.
Tanner.
Tanner's dad wasn't alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm probably older than Tanner's dad.
Yes, that's a certainty.
Yeah,
Oh my
right.
God.
Right? You know what? Zeke must have been, he must have left fairly amicably. They might have just said, okay, just walk away and, we won't ruin your reputation out there, because he went to work for Prince right after that. It seemed like he was with Prince for quite a while.
Right.
So.
Well, he had some good gigs and I think he was with Kenny Chesney. And so he was. That's how they ended up Van Halen getting with Kenny Chesney and hanging with him and coming on stage with him and stuff.
So it couldn't have ended that badly,
I think it ended badly at the time, but I think later years it kind of ended up being okay. And I think the same thing happened with Rudy. It didn't end well with Rudy, apparently.
Right.
And then they kind of either, reconciled or something, but Rudy would show up every once. You'll see some of these pictures with Rudy with the backstage pass, not working for Ed, but just kind of visiting, when we know for a fact that it was, another tech like Lonnie Totman or even Tom Weber, working, or Matt.
I think Rudy was different though, because I think Rudy was Ed's friend in high school probably too, and they grew up together.
No. Rudy. Well, yeah, that's the thing. I think that's you're right. I agree. That may be the difference to me between Zeke and Rudy. I think
Rudy knew Ed as Ed, Ed as, my friend, my buddy Ed, his band. I'm helping them this weekend or stuff.
Right. But that's the thing, though. I think Ed would get pissed off when people would do things to rip him off in a way. And I think, I don't think Rudy was doing that, but I'm given to understand that Zeke kind of parted with him because of him doing stuff like this Striper guitar and, getting some of the picks. Tom Weber talked about another tech that got fired for taking picks and selling them, on eBay or whatever, and memorabilia and stuff like that. So, Ed didn't take too kindly to that, but, I think it just in later years, especially on like the last tour, I know that like Rudy had visited him and
well,
he was.
Jerry's saying in the chat here, Rudy was out on the Balance tour. He met him in Philly there. So Rudy would seem to pop up and come and go, over the years. But that's what I said. I think Rudy knew him before he was the rock star. It was just Ed, you know what I mean? It's like, my friend Ed, you know what I mean? So I think that probably held some kind of weight because, it's like before he was the superhero, Rudy, he was like, oh, he's my buddy, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And to hear they both were dating the same chick when they met, the Kim, what's her name? Kim. I forget her last name, but I read it.
The one that's on the boards. I think is she the one writing a book now or something like that?
Oh, Kim.
There was another one that I thought maybe her name was Kim. I'd seen her on one of these boards. I don't know.
That would be interesting.
To write a book or something
That could be. Now I only knew about her because when I transcribed Stephen Rosen's interview with Rudy, and that unreleased thing that I put out on VH Links. So he very good, Randy. Yeah. So, but I think Rudy, the thing about Rudy that I learned from that interview was Rudy was guitar tech loosely. Rudy didn't know how to cut a nut. He didn't know how to do technical things on the guitar. He could string. I think he could string a guitar, and I think he could tune it up, sort of. But Rudy was an amp guy and a monitor guy. And a logistics guy as far as the monitor system. So when you read the interview that I transcribed, it's Eddie did his guitar stuff himself for the Roth years. He tuned all of his guitars himself. It wasn't Rudy tuning the guitars. Now Rudy would, boil the strings, and he would, he would probably take the time and store them or whatever. And then Eddie would be the one that was stringing his guitars most of the time. And then Rudy would do the emergency thing where, okay, I'll fit, a string breaks, I'll go put a string on or whatever and do that kind of thing. But Rudy wasn't really like on the level of Tom Weber, who is a real tech.
Yeah. And back then, Eddie wouldn't even change his strings, I don't think, till he broke one. All right. Or then he would,
And that was the thing in the interview. You're right. That was for the studio, though. He didn't change. Yeah. At home, he never changed his strings until they broke. But live, he would put a fresh pack of strings on every show.
Oh, he would. Okay. Because I know Tom Weber would do that every night, too.
Yeah. But that was live. That was for live.
Right.
Different in the studio, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember he said he liked the sound of dead strings. Remember that? Eddie said he liked the sound.
And that continued until the end. That was through A Different Kind of Truth and the whole thing. Yeah. And the Roth reunion tour when they're rehearsing, even when they're rehearsing, it's just, no, I don't change strings until he kept the funk on him. He didn't wipe his strings down or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was an interesting thing in that interview, was that to find that confirmed. He definitely put on brand new strings every single show, going back to the 78 tour all the way through Roth, and started boiling the strings only for the Floyd Rose systems, not before that, when he was using Fender and playing the other guitars like the Destroyer or the Shark. The boiling strings was strictly for the Floyd Rose, and that was to do with the boiling the strings was so that the guitar strings didn't stretch out on the instrument itself at any point.
I remember I was drunk once in like 1983, and I said, hey, he boils the strings. I go, I'm just going to throw them in the microwave. Won't that do the same thing? So I threw them in the microwave.
And that was, you may have actually done that, because I don't know if it got out in the in any Eddie interviews but in that Rudy interview that I transcribed, Eddie did say in the interview, he said you could put strings in a microwave to dry them out. He claimed that he dried them out in the sun so that they wouldn't rust. But he said, well, you could put them in the microwave, and he goes, otherwise they'll rust. And then he says, I dry them out in the sun so they don't rust. But who gives an F if they rust, is what he said. But the actual fact is anybody knows, do not put metal objects in a microwave.
I didn't know that then. I was like 18 years old, and I was drunk, and but it was like the 4th of July, and then I remember taking the strings out, and they were like broken. They were like burnt, like just like right through the string. It was like, yeah. So don't do that. It doesn't work.
You didn't blow up your microwave?
It wasn't my microwave. I think it was my parents' microwave. It was like I didn't know anything about microwaves. I didn't know you couldn't put metal in them. I mean, I think I learned it that night that you couldn't put metal in them.
And I'm sitting there thinking, why in the hell is Eddie telling people that you could put strings in a microwave to dry them?
I don't remember that, but maybe I did read that. I don't remember, but
yeah, he said that, and I'm just like, Jesus, Eddie, that is crazy talk, man. And so so that was kind of an interesting thing to discover, because I just remember filing that under oh no, Eddie, there's no way Eddie boiled his frickin' strings. What is that? But then when I transcribed that interview and Rudy described the process, and he said, yes, twice a year they had what was called string spaghetti or string soup. And so he would get a big old like double boiler pot, throw the strings in, boil them for like 20 minutes, and then dry them. And then I think what he ended up doing was he would gingerly recoil each string, put them in their respective paper bag, because back then every string set came with an individual bag for each string. It's not this double bagging, Save the Planet stuff that's been going on for years now. But back then it had their own individual thing. And that's the only logical way that they could have gone on the road with, strings already pre-boiled for Eddie to install on his guitars night after night.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting thing to read and find out and to learn that it was to do with only the Floyd Rose and not to do with the Fender system. So a lot of people got confused thinking that was one of his tricks to keep the Fender tremolo in tune, but it was not at all. Strictly for the Floyd Rose. And it was really to deal with the non-fine tuner Floyd Roses, because that was the thing. If you boil the strings and the strings are already pre-stretched, once you tune up to pitch, you could clamp down the nut and the strings would stay. And as you know, once you clamp down the nut on a fine tuner Floyd, you're done, right? So that was his solution, and apparently it worked well for him. And he continued to do that even after he got fine tuners on the Floyds. And I believe that, and this was that interview that I transcribed was in the summer of '85, right around the time Dave quit. And so I think when Zeke came into the fold was when they stopped boiling strings. So Zeke didn't boil strings, and they had completely stopped doing that. And because when you got fine tuners, you can fine tune. You don't need to do that. But
right.
So that was rather interesting. I would be interested to know. And our pal Jeff Goebel had made an interesting post today. He's talking about how he'll ask Neil Sean a question on his Instagram or whatever, and Neil will respond to him a lot of times, right? I'm curious if Neil had done this boiling process, because he was like one of the first 2 or 3 Floyd Rose users, and he also had the non-fine tuner Floyd Rose system. So I'm curious if Neil had ever done that. So good question. Throw that out there, Jeff. Maybe you can answer. Get Neil to answer that question. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Right.
Boy, that's some guitar nerd stuff right there. Who gives a monkeys about this?
Exactly. Right.
Oh God.
Boiling strings, right?
And it's funny because here I'm asking, well, in 1979, 1980, did you boil your guitar strings? You haven't boiled strings in 50 years, but did you do it once 49 years ago? I mean, I'm an idiot. What am I talking about?
I'd love to see Neil Sean's reaction to that as somebody asking him that question.
That's inside baseball right there, man.
Yeah, right. I want to mention before I forget too is like Eddie's Lamborghini. So they're going to do an unveiling of it, and I did see one picture, and they were supposed to have it completely factory restored and to the Verde green color and everything, and with the original rims and everything like that on it. And I guess Polo Storico in Italy decided they weren't going to do that, and they kept it red. And I noticed that at the rims Eddie had on it, which I don't think were the original rims, are on it, still on it. They completely refinished them too. So the car is completely rebuilt, and they're going to unveil it soon. So we'll talk about that probably maybe on the next show or whatever. But it's coming soon.
That's awesome. I thought that was interesting that I think it's a 72.
Yeah.
Which is the year of my birth. So I thought that was pretty funny that here they're rock stars, and Eddie and Valerie are getting like matching cars or whatever. Yeah. And so she gets him a used 72 Ferrari. It's like even people they were budget conscious back then even.
Well, I swear that on she was on the Tonight Show in like 1982 or something like that, and Jay Leno's a big car guy. Apparently, Claudio, who introduced Eddie to Sammy, the whole story like that. Apparently, Claudio sued Jay Leno at one point because Jay Leno like defamed him or something like that. Yeah, saying that he didn't do, he probably said he was going to do certain work and he didn't do it or something like that. But yeah, because Claudio's place was on right on Van Nuys Boulevard, so it was only like not even like 7 or 8 minutes away from Eddie's house. And I guess Jay Leno, he collected all. I know he's got 2 Lamborghini Miuras. I know that. But Valerie was on there, and I know they were talking about it. And Jay asked her about something about the price, or how would you pay for that? Yeah. So she leaned over and she whispered in Jay's ear, and then Jay blurted out $31,000, and she's like, and she said, Jay, I think that she actually paid like 10 years later, probably $31,000 in $1982.
Yeah, well, it would have been probably like 92 because Carson was still hosting in 1982. So probably would have been 92.
It was, I think Jay was filling in. It wasn't 92. It was like 80. It was, Carson would go on vacation. It might have been 80.
He could have been guest hosting in 82. That's true.
Yeah, it was a guest hosting. Carson was still there because it was they were married a couple of years, I think, at that point. But I distinctly remember her saying him saying 31,000. What? No. And then she was like, Jay, like that. And he goes, no, I'm only kidding. But I don't think he was kidding. So I think that.
No, why would she say Jay?
Right, exactly. So I mean, that clip is probably out there somewhere. So if she only paid that for that car, which is worth about $2 million now. So when the guy bought the Hot for Teacher guitar for like 3.9 million, I go, that's the dumbest thing ever. I go, you could have bought that Lamborghini for 2 million, which was actually on a Van Halen record, not like the Hot for Teacher guitar. It wasn't on any record. You know what I mean?
Right.
The Lamborghini was actually on the record. You know what I mean?
Good point.
For $2 million, you know what I mean? So
that's killer. And the license plate is still the same license plate.
Exactly. So they're going to unveil that soon. So we'll definitely cover that, because I asked the engineer at Polo Storico, he was on Instagram, and I asked him, I said, have you ever seen another Miura with fuel injectors like on it? And he said, not yet. That was, I guess, the only one he'd ever seen with the fuel injection.
Wow. Would that have been something that Claudio did, you think?
I don't think it was Claudio, because there's a video on YouTube. You can look it up, and the guy talks about it, about how and he tells a great story about how Lamborghinis, Miuras were known to go on fire. Like I saw another guy was buying one, and he brought his wife in Great Britain. I guess he was, he had money, and he took his wife to see the car that he was going to buy, and she noticed 4 fire extinguishers. And she said to him, she goes, is there something I should know about this car? And he goes, well, yeah, I guess the fuel spills out of the carburetors onto the block, and the car catches on fire, and apparently at some point it's going to happen to anybody who owned one of them, a Miura, and because there was no like fuel return or something on it. So it happened to Eddie, he said Eddie was flying up Coldwater Canyon, and he apparently told them, open the gate, you know what I mean? Because the car is on fire. So apparently he went up to the gate, and probably the back gate to the studio there. And I don't know who it was at the time, but they were outside waiting with the fire extinguisher, and they put it out. But he tells the story. It's if you go on YouTube, there's a video. He talks about working on Eddie's car. He talks about the fuel injectors and stuff like that. It was like totally custom. That was like the first time that it was probably ever done. So.
Wow, man, that is super cool.
It's a cool story. You should check that video out. But
have any of you guys ever ridden in or driven either a Lamborghini or a Ferrari?
Never driven. I've been in a Ferrari, but I've never a Lamborghini.
Yeah, I've never been in a Lamborghini, but I did get to sit. I didn't drive, but I sat in a Ferrari. And if Caleb is watching, he probably remembers where this dealership is. When I was a kid in Santa Monica, there was a Ferrari dealership that was right. I lived right like 4 doors down from Wilshire Boulevard and near Pacific Coast Highway. So one direction, about 4 houses down, you go, it's Wilshire Boulevard. And another direction, 4 houses down, it's St. John's Hospital, where Edward passed away. This is where I lived. Now, there was a Ferrari dealership right down Wilshire right there. And man, I was like all up in Magnum PI and everything. So I'm like 11 years old, and like we're walking down the street and with my mom, I'm like, Mom, can we go in the Ferrari dealership? And man, so like, they were cool with me. I was just like a little kid, and they let me go actually sit in this killer. It was I forget the name of the model that was on
428, I think was it?
Yeah, the Magnum PI one. You know, it was one of those 428.
Yeah,
and the color was so bitchin', man. It was and I don't know the name of the color, but it was like this teal green.
Oh wow.
Oh, it was so choice, man. Yeah. And I sat in there, and I'm just thinking, oh, he's gonna let me sit in here, and this is cool. And like when you get in those kind of sports cars, and I'm just a little kid. You have to you're like laying down. It's like laying down like in a sensory deprivation tank, like in Altered States or something. And like so your feet are way out here, and and can you imagine tall Tom Selleck, jumping in that vehicle and everything?
Right.
So wild, man. And so I'm just thinking, oh, that's cool. So the salesman he reaches in, he's like in the showroom, he turns it on, man, and he goes, go ahead and hit the gas. I'm like, you out of your mind, Wow. So like I did, and I hit it, and it was like, it was such a cool sensation. So he let me do that. That was my little experience with the Ferrari.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've never been down the street in one, but that was my little experience. Ever since then, I've been fantasizing about getting me a Strat in that color, because man, it was such a wild, cool color, man.
My friend had a 428. He had my friend Gary had one, and he's a huge Van Halen nut too, a complete lunatic. I mean,
brilliant.
Yeah, he's got some serious collection of guitars and stuff like that. All Van Halen.
Oh yeah, Gary, man.
Yeah, but he had a 428 Ferrari. It's pretty cool. Yeah, he's had a bunch of great cars. Cobra 427 Cobra, and it was a kit. I think it was the kit one, but even those kit cars are worth a couple $100,000. I think now the Cobra kit cars 427s. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, man. Well, Eddie and his
well, we can talk about that. We can talk about that when we do the EVH tribute show. I've got to do a plug for that, folks, because that's we've got that booked on the channel. So it'll be the date of Eddie's anniversary here for us here in New Zealand, which is a day ahead for you guys. So it'll be a Friday here for us, Thursday for you guys. We're going to be streaming on the channel. I think this is the 3rd anniversary of Eddie's passing. So Alan, Johnny, and Jimmy, we've been doing this for 3 years. We're going to have a few people jumping on. Normally what we do, guys, if you're not familiar, we have people come on and they'll spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes or whatever talking about their experiences with the music, with Eddie. We've had some success with having 10 people on the channel doing that in the past, so we look forward to that. Alan, I'm sure you'll be on for a little bit. Jimmy and Johnny, you guys will be on, so we'll be streaming for 8 hours, so there's plenty of time for people to come on and share and talk and have a bit of a celebration.
Yeah, and we'll also have the remasters out that day too. So I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point on the 6th.
Fantastic. Hey guys, we've been going for 2 hours, and we like to sort of wind up the show when we're at the 2 hour mark. We always appreciate it. We could go on for another 2 or 3 hours, but that's not the point. We'll save some topics and conversations for the tribute show. Before we go around and do the round table and say goodbye and pass on our regards, I'd like to say thank you, Alan. It's always a pleasure having you jump on, bro. We know that you can't do it, and we'll always bump any topics we have to get you on when you've got the time. Appreciate it. Thank you, bro. It's always wonderful insight to hear you come on and share your experiences and your thoughts. Jimmy, you're a bit quiet today, bro. I'm a little bit sad about that because there are a couple of things that you wanted to say, but you're going to have to save it all for the next show on Thursday.
Sorry, Jimmy. I wouldn't shut up.
That's because sometimes, I swear, sometimes I think John wanted to be a drummer, but just didn't want to carry the shit around. So he's like, I guess I'll play guitar. Anyway,
we always have a bit of fun, but Jimmy.
No, these guys are talking. I mean, I said my piece about, that whole, fake guitar and all that. So, learn some stuff, listening. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. Brother.
Yeah.
So, hey, I'm going to send you guys that link to that cool.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
It's funny
this is going to be especially for you, Jimmy, because I guarantee, will hear the echo on all that stuff that you don't hear the echo on.
Oh, okay.
So can we talk about that on Thursday then? We should talk about that on Thursday.
I knew something like that existed because just going back to Dweezil's podcast thing or whatever it's called, I'm a fan, so I've been listening to that. He had an alternate solo for Hear About It Later that he played on the Fair Warning episode, and I was like, it's unbelievable. There's an alternate solo for Hear About It Later. You know what I mean? So I knew that some stuff like that was floating around at some point.
Yeah. There is that stuff, but when I send you the stuff, pay attention to the stuff on the first album, especially. But you will now, if you cannot hear the Echoplex on these dry tracks, and again, this is the sound that's coming out of the cabinet in the room with Eddie, which has the Echoplex in front of it. So the first 3 albums is Echoplex. And then the Fair Warning album still has slapback echo, but it's coming from a digital device. It's not coming from the Echoplex anymore. But it's almost always, through Eddie's career, there's almost always been a little bit of slapback echo, which you cannot hear it while you're playing. But when you stop, you can hear it. And I know you were having trouble hearing it, and it is kind of difficult to hear it when you have it drenched in the live chamber reverb and the other stuff that's going on. But I think it'll be an interesting thing for you to hear it. I guarantee you will hear it now on the dry tracks. It's going to be fun.
Fantastic. All right, folks, we're going to leave you with that. We're going to come back and talk about this in 6 days' time. Thank you for hanging out with us. I'm going to attach everybody's social media links on this description. If you want to come back and you want to subscribe to Alan's YouTube, Jimmy and John's social media accounts as well. If you want to participate with us on our tribute show, give me a message or get in touch with Al if you speak to Al regularly, or Jimmy or John. Between the 4 of us and 6 other people that are going to be producing the show, we'll make sure people get on and talk about EVH. Other than that, guys, I think we should cruise.
Yeah.
Oh, before we go, hey, shout out to our brothers Brad and Simon. Miss you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Don't go anywhere, guys. I'm going to play the video. Don't go anywhere. We're just going to wave goodbye, and we'll play a quick video, and I want to talk to you guys. Don't go anywhere.
Nice wave.